Missiles are ready. They have always been ready. You have 700 ballistic missiles, 50 nuclear warheads, and a military parade every April that makes foreign journalists go quiet in a way they never quite explain. You have submarines. You have intercontinental ballistic missiles that, according to your own scientists, your very loyal, very well-fed scientists, can reach the eastern seaboard of the United States in under 33 minutes. You have all of this. And right now at 11:47 in the morning, in a room that smells of cigarette smoke and chrysanthemum tea, you are watching a 42-inch television screen showing CNN. They are not talking about you. They are talking about Iran. It is April. The air in Pyongyang is cold in the way it always is in early spring, a biting, disciplined cold that feels appropriate for a nation that has never been allowed to be soft. Outside the window of the Ryangsong residence, your official compound in the northeast of the capital, you can hear the faint sound of military drills in the distance. Boot heels against concrete, the bark of a commanding officer. The mechanical rhythm of a country that has been at war, technically, officially, since 1950, with only a ceasefire agreement, never a peace treaty, separating it from annihilation. You are 40 years old. You have been supreme leader of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea since 2011. In that time, you have overseen 6 nuclear tests, dozens of ballistic missile launches, the execution of your own uncle, the alleged assassination of your half-brother at Kuala Lumpur International Airport, using a nerve agent, and the construction of a cult of personality so elaborate that your citizens are required by law to hang your portrait, alongside portraits of your father and grandfather, in their homes. You are, by any measurable standard, the most dangerous man in the room. The problem is nobody is in the room with you. On the screen, a retired American general is pointing at a map of the Middle East. Red lines, blue lines, a circle drawn around the Natanz nuclear facility in Iran. The general is explaining, with the casual confidence of a man who has been on television hundreds of times, why Iran's alleged weapons program represents an existential threat to regional stability. You set down your teacup. Alleged, you almost laugh. Iran's weapons program is alleged, claimed, suspected. The Americans speak about Iran's nuclear capability the way a suspicious neighbor speaks about a noise behind a locked door. They are not sure, they are inferring. They are building a case from satellite images and intercepted communications and defector testimonies. You, on the other hand, have detonated nuclear devices underground in Pyongyang 6 times. The seismic sensors in South Korea, Japan, China, and the United States all recorded it. The yield of your 2017 hydrogen bomb test was estimated at 140 kilotons, nearly 10 times the bomb that destroyed Hiroshima. There is no allegation, there is no suspicion. There is a crater in the ground, and it is yours. And yet, the general on the television screen has not mentioned your name once. You reach for a pen and write nothing. You just hold it. The conflict has been escalating for weeks. The United States and Israel have been conducting coordinated strikes on Iranian military infrastructure, radar installations, missile launch sites, command centers outside Tehran. Iran has responded with drone barrages targeting Israeli cities, some intercepted by the Iron Dome, some not. The casualties are mounting. The language coming out of Washington has shifted from measured response to sustained pressure campaign, which everyone in every government in the world knows is diplomatic language for "we are not stopping." The United Nations Security Council has convened 3 emergency sessions. European leaders are issuing statements. Russia and China are calling for de-escalation while quietly calculating what a prolonged American military commitment in the Middle East means for their own ambitions elsewhere. Everyone is talking. Everyone has a position. Everyone has been invited to an opinion. You watch your aide pour a fresh cup of tea. What is Russia saying? You ask. Your aide reads from a printed briefing sheet. Lavrov has called for restraint. Xi Jinping has spoken with both the Iranian foreign minister and the American Secretary of State. Diplomatic channels are open. And us, you ask. Your aide pauses almost imperceptibly. The KCNA has issued a statement condemning American imperialism, he says. You nod slowly. A statement condemning American imperialism. You have issued those statements so many times they have begun to feel like furniture, present, unnoticed. Serving no purpose anyone could specifically name. You issue a statement condemning American imperialism the way a man clears his throat in an empty room. The sound is technically real. Nobody hears it. You were not always irrelevant to them. There was a time, 2017, 2018, when you were the story, when your missile tests interrupted American news cycles for days. When the President of the United States called you Rocket Man at the United Nations General Assembly, which was insulting, yes, but it was also something else. It was acknowledgement. It was the world's most powerful man using his most prominent stage to say your name. You flew to Singapore in June 2018 for the first summit between a sitting American president and a North Korean leader in history. You shook hands. Cameras flashed. The image went everywhere. For exactly one moment, you were not the isolated dictator of a hermit kingdom. You were a participant in world affairs, an equal, a man whose presence at a negotiating table was considered necessary. Then it collapsed. Hanoi 2019, the second summit. You walked in expecting sanctions relief. The Americans walked in expecting complete denuclearization. Neither side had correctly read the other. Or perhaps both sides had read the other exactly right and simply decided it didn't matter. You walked out. The Americans watched you go. The press called it a failure, and then slowly the story moved on. Iran began enriching uranium more aggressively. The Abraham Accords shifted the geometry of Middle Eastern alliances. A pandemic swept across the planet. A war began in Ukraine. And you with your missiles and your warheads and your 2 million active military personnel became a footnote, a bullet point in a briefing document. A concern, yes. A priority, no. The world had other problems. You stand up and walk to the window. Below you, the compound is immaculate in the way that only enforced perfection can be. Hedgerows trimmed to the centimeter. A guard standing at attention so still he looks like a photograph of a guard. The sky is flat and gray, the color of gunmetal, which feels appropriate. Somewhere south of here, past the demilitarized zone, that 4-kilometer strip of land that is, despite its name, one of the most heavily armed borders on Earth, South Korea is watching this war unfold with nervous precision. Seoul, a city of 10 million people, sits 35 miles from the border. Your artillery systems could reach it. Your generals have told you this many times, always with the same expression. Not eagerness, exactly. More like a craftsman describing the specifications of a tool. You are not thinking about Seoul right now. You are thinking about the fact that the United States is currently engaged in a military operation in the Middle East, justified in part by the threat of weapons of mass destruction, and that the country with the most documented, most tested, most publicly displayed weapons of mass destruction on Earth is currently watching that operation on a 42-inch television. The absurdity of it lands on you like cold water. You call a meeting. Your inner circle assembles in the oak-paneled conference room on the second floor, the one with no windows, which was your father's preference and which you have never changed, because changing it would require you to explain to yourself why you were different from your father, and that is a conversation you are not ready to have. Around the table, your sister, Kim Yo-jong, who is the only person in the room you actually trust. The director of the Reconnaissance General Bureau, your foreign policy advisor, and 3 generals whose names the outside world does not know. You tell them you want options, not for war. You are careful about that word, the way a man is careful near a gas leak. You want options for engagement, for relevance, for a seat at a table that currently has no chair for you. Your sister speaks first, as she often does. She is 3 years younger than you and significantly more dangerous, which is a fact you understand and have chosen to interpret as an asset rather than a threat. She says that the situation presents an opportunity not to fight but to be noticed, to make movements, to remind the world that the Korean peninsula has its own geometry, its own fault lines, its own potential for catastrophe. She does not need to say the rest. You all know the rest. If you launch a missile test right now, not at anyone, just into the sea, a routine demonstration of capability, the American news cycle will turn toward you. Analysts will speculate. The Pentagon will respond. For 48 hours, maybe 72, you will exist again in the consciousness of the people who matter. This is what power has been reduced to, you think. Existing in the consciousness of the people who matter. You approve the missile test for the following Tuesday. A Hwasong-17, your largest, your most dramatic, the one the Americans call the monster Eichbom, a designation you find simultaneously gratifying and belittling, the way a large man might feel being called a giant, technically a compliment, but not the kind that leads anywhere. The test proceeds as planned. The missile travels 1,000 kilometers and lands in the waters between Japan and North Korea, in the exclusive economic zone of Japan, which is technically a provocation, but a calibrated one, the diplomatic equivalent of clearing your throat loudly in a quiet room. Japan summons your non-existent ambassador and issues a formal protest. South Korea goes to emergency military readiness for 11 hours. The United States Pacific Command issues a statement expressing concern. CNN covers it for 4 minutes before returning to a live report from Tel Aviv. 4 minutes. You watch the 4 minutes with the focused attention of a man reviewing an audit. Then the broadcast returns to the Middle East, and you are gone again. There is a meme. You learn about it through a briefing from your technology and surveillance office, the department responsible for monitoring foreign internet content, which in your country is a one-way window feeding information in but allowing nothing back out. They print it for you. A cartoon, or not a cartoon exactly, a screenshot from a social media post, a a joke that has been shared over 2 million times in 18 hours. The image shows a child sitting alone in a room surrounded by toys, elaborate toys, powerful-looking toys. The child's expression is one of profound, almost existential disappointment. The caption reads, *POV, you're the kid with all the toys but nobody wants to play with you. Beneath the image, someone has added a single word, *Kim. The room has gone very quiet. Your foreign policy advisor is studying a point on the wall directly above your head. Your sister is reading the printed sheet with an expression so neutral it is almost theatrical in its neutrality. Your generals are sitting with the stillness of men who have made a collective decision not to exist for the next 90 seconds. You read the meme again, then you put it down on the table face down. Continue, you say. The irony, which you do not say aloud but which settles into your chest like a stone, is that the meme is not wrong. This is the thing about power at the scale you possess. It creates its own paradox. You are dangerous enough that engaging you is genuinely risky. The Americans know this. This is why, for all the fire-breathing language from Washington about regime change and human rights and the axis of evil, no one has attempted to do to you what they did to Saddam Hussein. What they are doing in a different register to Iran. You are too expensive a problem. The calculus doesn't work. Seoul is too close. The peninsula is too volatile. The cost of miscalculation is measured in millions of lives, and the answer always comes out the same. Not now, not you. Leave it alone, so they leave you alone. And leaving you alone, which was supposed to be the acknowledgement of your power, the ultimate respect, turns out to feel exactly like being ignored. Muammar Gaddafi gave up his weapons program in 2003, cooperated with the West, opened his country, and was killed by his own people in a drainage ditch in 2011 with the tacit approval of the NATO alliance. You watched that. Every leader in the world with a weapons program watched that. You drew a conclusion so obvious it barely needed stating. The weapons keep you alive, but the weapons also keep you alone. 2 weeks pass. The conflict in the Middle East does not escalate into the world war that some analysts predicted, or perhaps it simply hasn't yet, which is a different thing. Iran absorbs the strikes and retaliates with moderation, as if both sides have agreed without saying so publicly that there is a ceiling on this particular exchange. International diplomacy works in this invisible architecture of unspoken agreements, thresholds known to all parties but mentioned by none. You watch all of it. You watch it the way a man watches a game he was not selected for, with the close attention of someone cataloging what is happening, filling a mental ledger with observations that have nowhere to go. You notice the specific way American military assets have been repositioned in the Gulf. You notice what that repositioning does to the Eastern Pacific, the thinning of attention in your direction. Like a security guard who has turned to watch a fire and doesn't hear the window open behind him. You notice the window. You don't open it, not yet, but you stand very close to it. Your sister comes to you late one evening with a report from your agents in Beijing. The Chinese have made quiet contact with Iranian officials through a third-party intermediary in Oman, offering to broker a ceasefire. If the ceasefire holds, the American military posture in the region will relax. Assets will return. The window you noticed will close again, slowly, the way they always do, and you will go back to being a managed problem on a list of managed problems. How long does the ceasefire negotiation take? You ask. 4 to 6 weeks if it moves quickly, your sister says. Longer if either side wants to buy time. You sit with this. The numbers have a particular quality to them. They are both too long and too short. Too long to act impulsively. Too short to build anything real. What would we need to do, you say carefully, to make it longer? Your sister looks at you. In this look is an entire conversation, a calculus of risk and consequence, and the specific kind of courage that is required to want something the world has decided you're not allowed to want. She doesn't answer the question. But she doesn't say no. Here is the truth about wanting to be part of something larger than yourself, which applies whether you are a factory worker in Ohio or the supreme leader of a nuclear state. The wanting itself has a weight. It presses on you. It changes the texture of every ordinary decision. You eat breakfast and you are thinking about it. You review military readiness reports and you are thinking about it. You stand at the window in the early morning, when Pyongyang is still gray and flat and quiet, and the compound is at its most honest, no parades, no banners, no orchestrated displays of loyalty, and you think about the very simple, very human thing underneath all the missiles and the warheads and the 70-year-old ideology. You want to matter. Not to your people who have no choice but to believe you matter. That belief is compulsory, backed by the apparatus of the state, as reliable as it is hollow. You want to matter to the people who do have a choice. The people watching from outside the walls, the generals in the Pentagon, the analysts in Langley, the diplomats in Geneva, the reporters on the ground in places where things are actually happening. You have built the ultimate argument for your own relevance. You have tested it underground 6 times. You have launched it into the sky until Japan went to emergency readiness. You have starved a population to feed it. You have isolated a country to protect it. You have built, over 30 years and 3 generations of your family, the most expensive proof of concept in the history of the Korean Peninsula, and the world looked at your proof and went back to watching Iran. The ceasefire talks collapse in week 3. Not because of anything you did. They collapse because Iran makes a demand the Americans cannot publicly accept, and the Americans make a concession Iran cannot publicly take, and the gap between what both sides need for domestic consumption and what both sides can actually live with turns out to be unbridgeable in the current moment. The strikes resume. The news cycle resets. The analysts are back on television with their red lines and their maps. And for a moment, just a moment, your window opens again. You don't move. You stand at the edge of it. You feel the air coming through it, cold and possible, carrying with it the smell of a world where you are a variable and not a constant, where your choices have consequences that reach beyond the peninsula, where the toys in the room have meaning beyond their own weight. You stand there for a long time. And then your sister puts a hand on your arm, a gesture so rare it takes you a full second to process it, and she says very quietly, "Not yet." 2 words, "not yet," meaning the moment is close but the moment is not now. Meaning, to move too early is to move wrong, and moving wrong is a luxury available to countries that can absorb mistakes which you are not. Meaning, the kid with all the toys knows, better than anyone, that the worst thing you can do is take them out at the wrong moment, because if you do, the other kids don't come to play, they come to take them away. You breathe out. You step back from the window. Tuesday comes again. Another parade, another broadcast. Your generals stand at attention as the Hwasong series rolls down Kim Il-sung Square on their massive transporter vehicles, their white bodies gleaming against the gray Pyongyang sky like enormous teeth. The crowd cheers on cue, and perhaps some of them mean it. You've stopped being able to tell, which is its own kind of loneliness. You stand on the reviewing platform in your gray mouse suit and your black sunglasses, and you look out at the machines your country bankrupted itself to build. And behind you, the cameras capture the image that will run in briefing rooms across the world. A stocky man with a severe haircut, standing over the most advanced weapons system the Korean Peninsula has ever produced, looking out over a city that belongs entirely to him. On the other side of the planet, the war continues without you. The missiles are ready. They have always been ready. That is the problem. That will always be the problem. You are the most prepared man in the world for a fight that no one will bring to your door, and you have finally understood. In the way you understand things that arrive too late to be useful, that being prepared for everything is functionally identical to being ready for nothing. The world does not fear you enough to fight you. It fears you exactly the right amount to leave you alone. And being left alone at this scale, with this machinery, in this silence, is the closest thing to a prison that no one will ever build a wall around. You watch the missiles pass. You are still waiting.